This is Quarina, and you're listening to Bold, Brown and British, a weekly podcast where we discuss what it means to be a brown person in a Western world. We've spoken about colorism, third culture identity, and dating, amongst many others on this podcast. So if this sounds like the type of content that you want to hear, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also message us on Instagram. The handle is @BoldBrownAndBritish, or drop us an email via our website at www.boldbrownbritish.com. So without further ado, let's get on with this week's episode. You ever met a brown boy who talks about his mom like she's the reincarnation of Beyonce, Mother Teresa and Gordon Ramsay, all in one? You might be witnessing emotional incest. Welcome back, my beautiful samosas, to Bold Brown British, the podcast where we peel back the flaky layers of British Asian life and sometimes find things that are a little bit uncooked, a little bit underspicy, and a lot unspoken. Today's episode, it's gonna ruffle some aunties to butters. We're talking about emotional incest, not to be confused with actual incest, okay? Breathe. I'm not trying to get us both disowned. Emotional incest is when a parent, often a mum, forms an inappropriately close emotional bond with their child, treating them like a surrogate partner or a therapist. In the South Asian community, this especially shows up in some intense mother-son duos. And before the WhatsApp forwards start flying, I'm not saying that loving your mum is wrong. I love my mum. I'd fight a tiger for her. Or maybe a panda. At least a panda. But there's a difference between love and emotional enmeshment, between respect and worship, between being a son and being her emotional husband. So buckle up, samosas. It's going to get personal, spicy, and dare I say it, uncomfortably familiar. Part 1. What is emotional incest? So let's get our definitions straight. Emotional incest, also called covert incest, is when a parent relies on a child to meet their emotional needs that should be met by another adult. Think of it like this. A mother is lonely, unsupported by her spouse, or maybe because she's a single parent. She turns to her son for emotional support, validation, and companionship. Over time, he becomes her rock, her confidant, her man of the house. Sounds sweet, right? Cute, even. Until he's 30, still living at home, and every girlfriend he brings home gets side-eyed into oblivion because no one will ever be good enough for my better. It's not just about what's said, it's about what's implied. You're not the only one who understands me. Or rather, you are the only one that understands me. I can't sleep unless you're home. You're the reason I'm still alive level of emotional burden that's placed on a child who's never asked for it. It's a boundary issue, a power issue, a gendered issue, and yes, samosas, it's also a cultural issue. So why does it show up in South Asian culture? Let's take a stroll down trauma lane, shall we? In South Asian culture, especially in older generations, women were, and often still are, taught to put their emotional needs on mute. You're not allowed to be vulnerable. You can't cry in front of your husband. You can't talk back to your in-laws. You can't have hobbies unless it's feeding 10 people or doing a rangoli in silence. So where does that emotional energy go? Often, it gets projected onto children, most commonly sons. Sons, the golden children, the retirement plans, the ones who carry the family name. And in many families, they become the emotional center of a mother's universe, not by choice, but by duty. Meanwhile, daughters are told, you'll get married and go to someone else's house. Translation, you're temporary, but sons are forever. And in that space, something unhealthy can grow. Mothers start saying things like, you're the only one who understands me. They create emotional intimacy with their sons that they don't even attempt with their spouses. They vent about their marriage, about their dad, about the in-laws, about the price of onions, everything to the son. And that son, he grows up believing that he's responsible for his mom's happiness. He doesn't just love her, he's emotionally fused with her. He starts to feel guilt when he pulls away, when he dates, when he chooses his partner over his mom. And that's when the fireworks start. Let's talk about these sons. Brown men who've been raised as emotional husbands without knowing it. On the surface, sure, there's mummy's boys. They bring her tea, they never argue, they call her 3 times a day. But dig deeper, and you'll often find that emotionally stunted men who struggle to feel and create emotional intimacy with their partners. They feel guilty when they're setting boundaries. They panic when their partner doesn't behave like their mother, i.e., serve, sacrifice, and stay silent. They get defensive when their mum is criticized, even when she's dead wrong. They expect their partners to compete with their mum. And if you are their partner, good luck, babes. You're signing up for a weird triangle where you're always second best. You could be the Priyanka Chopra with a PhD in chapati making and still be told, mum's chapatis and saag is just different. These men aren't evil, they're wounded. They were taught that their value lies in being emotionally available to their mother, not to themselves. They weren't raised with tools for emotional autonomy, and they were raised to be everything to their mum and nothing to themselves. Let's not villainize the mums here though, okay? Because South Asian mothers have carried a lot. Patriarchy, migration, language barriers, abuse, neglect, loneliness, poverty, the list goes on. Their emotional needs have been dismissed for generations. So when a son comes along and finally listens, validates and praises, it's understandable why she clings to that bond like a life raft. It's survival, it's comfort, and it's the only space where she feels seen. But even so, trauma doesn't justify trauma. Just because she was denied emotional support doesn't mean it's fair to put that burden on her child. Healing begins when we realize patterns, not just when we excuse them. Part 5. The guilt. Oh gosh, the guilt. South Asians do guilt like Michelin star chefs do souffles. We don't even need to say anything. One look from our mum and suddenly spine straightens, your bank account opens, and you're cancelling your plans to attend a cousin's engagement where you don't know the bride or the buffet menu. But this guilt hits differently when it's wrapped around emotional incest. Sons feel responsible. She sacrificed everything for me. She was there when no one else was. She gave up her happiness so I could live mine. And sure, gratitude is beautiful, but martyrdom, that's a setup for manipulation, because gratitude given freely is love. Gratitude demand out of obligation, emotional blackmail. So what do we do about it? How do we heal? How do sons unlearn this emotional codependency? How do mothers find identity beyond their children? And how do we, as a culture, start talking about this without crying into our biryani? We're going to get into it all next, samosas. Grab your chai, take a breath, and remember, we're not here to shame. We're here to understand. Let's bring this chat out of theory and into reality. I know you've seen this in action. You've sat at weddings where the groom was more emotional about leaving his mum than seeing the bride. You've had mates who can't book a holiday without mum's explicit written approval. You've maybe even dated someone who made you feel like an unwelcome side chick in your own relationship. So let's go through a few anonymized but all through familiar examples. These are composites, not shade at anyone specific. If you feel personally attacked, maybe sit with that, with a snack. Story 1. The never married mummy's man. Arjun is 35. He's charming, funny, he's got a decent job, and he still lives with his mum. Nothing wrong with that. Until you realize he's never really been in a serious relationship. Every time a woman gets close, it ends with some version of, she didn't get along with my mum. Here's the twist. No one gets along with his mum. Not because she's evil, but because she sees every woman as a threat to her kingdom. Arjun, bless him, has been his mum's emotional crutch since he was a teen. She vents to him about her sisters, her neighbours, her hip pain and her heartbreaks. When he talks to a woman, she sulks. When he goes on holiday, she cries. So what does he do? He ghosted the girl he really liked because he couldn't handle the tension at home. Samosas, that's not normal. That's not romantic. That's emotional entrapment dressed in a kurta. Story 2. The wife who married a triangle. Let's talk about Sana. Married into what she thought was a lovely family. Big house, big garden, big fridge, big hearts. But little did she know she wasn't just marrying Imran. She was marrying his mum, too. In their first year of marriage, Imran's mum would sit in their bedroom to chat while Sana got dressed. Every Sunday, she insisted on sitting between the couple on the sofa. Every disagreement, you don't respect my mum. Every holiday plan, who will cook for Amma when we're gone? Sana started feeling like a tenant, a stranger, a rival. She eventually said, I feel like your mum is your wife and I'm just your flatmate. Imran said, don't respect her. She said, I'm just trying to have boundaries. And he said, boundaries? She's my mum. What is there about boundaries with my mum? That, my friends, is the beginning of the end. Not the marriage, but the illusion that love means martyrdom. Signs you might be caught in emotional incest. Let's get practical for a sec. Whether you're a son, a mom, a partner, or just someone nosily listening to with a biscuit in hand, hey, no shame. Here are some signs that emotional incest might be playing out in your home. A parent shares romantic, emotional, or personal details with their child that they should really be sharing with another adult. The child feels guilty for growing up, moving out, or prioritizing other relationships. The parent discourages dating or marriage, or treats their child's partner as a competitor. The parent becomes passive-aggressive or even ill when the child starts forming other attachments. The child acts as the decision-maker, protector, or emotional validator for the parent. Sound familiar? If you're sitting there thinking, oh no, that's me, I do that, or my mum does that, breathe in, breathe out. No shame. We can't fix what we won't face. Recognizing it is the fight into healing. Breaking the cycle, Sons Edition. All right, to the brown boys listening, yes, you. I know some of you realizing that things aren't right, okay? It's like Neo waking up in the Matrix, isn't it? Except the red pill is shaped like a gulab jamun and it tastes like guilt. Here's the thing. You don't have to stay in that cycle. You're allowed to love your mom and set boundaries. You are allowed to be your own man. You're allowed to choose partners who don't cook like your mum, who don't sound like your mum, who don't act like your mum. Some healing steps for you. Therapy. Look, I know that desi men seems to have a complex about therapy. It's not a weakness, it's wisdom. Find a therapist who gets the cultural nuance, who can unpack that guilt and understand your needs. Start using I instead of we. You're not an extension of your mum. You're your own person. Practice saying things like, I feel, I want, and I need, without scanning her face for approval. Name what's happening. Not with blame, but with honesty. You can say, Mum, I feel like I carry a lot of your emotional load, and I want us to have a healthier relationship. I know, okay, before you get scared, it is possible to have honest conversations, again, without the guilt. That being said, prepare for pushback. She might cry, she might guilt trip, she might say, you've changed. And you know what? Good, you're supposed to change. That's called growing up, not growing apart. Breaking the cycle, Mother's Edition. To the aunties, ummas and mums out there, if you're listening, brave queen energy firstly, thank you, because this part is for you. You were never allowed to be soft. You were told to sacrifice, to endure, to make your sons the center of your world because no one made you the center of theirs. But it's not too late to shift, to release them, to rediscover yourself. Some healing steps for you. Make yourself the main character. What do you enjoy? Not your son's career, not your daughter-in-law's cooking. You. Start with a hobby, a social circle, a book club, anything that brings you joy outside of your children and your spouse. Reconnect with your spouse or your adult peers. Stop using your son as your emotional confidant. You deserve real adult companionship, not filtered secondhand intimacy from your kid. Speak to a therapist. Even one session can help untangle decades of social conditioning. You're not weak for wanting or needing help. You are strong for seeking it. Let them fly. You've raised your sons to be successful, independent men. Now let them be that. Loving your child doesn't mean gripping them so tightly that they can't breathe. And for the partners caught in the middle, big hug to the women and sometimes men who found themselves dating or married to someone who's in an emotional triangle with their mum or their parent. You're not crazy, you're not overreacting, you're not jealous of your mother and father-in-law. You're witnessing a dysfunctional pattern and it will wear you down if you don't address it. Speak up early and clearly. Name what you see. I feel like your mum is emotionally dependent on you and makes me feel invisible in our relationship. But don't make it a competition. It's not about choosing between you and her. It's about creating space for both relationships to be healthy and distinct. Set boundaries for yourself. You don't have to be a punching bag. You don't have to attend every family event or tolerate every microaggression. Boundaries aren't disrespect. They're self-respect. And know when to walk away. If your partner refuses to acknowledge the issue or gaslights you into thinking, this is just how brown families are, you need to ask yourself, is this the dynamic, the future I want? Because Samosa, you deserve to be a partner, not a third wheel. Changing the culture, one conversation at a time. Listen, this isn't a personal issue, it's cultural. And culture doesn't change overnight, but it does change when we talk, when we call things out, when we say, hey, this isn't healthy and we can do better. It changes when mums start creating joy outside of their children. Sons learn how to feel without guilt. Daughters-in-law are seen as people, not replacements. And families start talking, not just tolerating. It changes when podcasts and episodes like this exist. When you, Samosas, share this episode with your friends, your cousins, your mom, maybe after a deep breath and a backup plan though, yeah? So here we are, 5,000 emotional miles later, and we finally said it. Your mum is not your wife, bro. She's just your mum. She's your first love, yes, but she's not your only one. And she deserves her own healing, just like you deserve your own life. To the sons, be brave. To the mums, be free. And to the partners, be firm. And to everyone else, don't get close to that triangle. It's got sharp corners. As always, my lovely samosas, I'm sending you love, clarity, and the courage to unpick even the spiciest of topics. Sending you love and spice.
Oh, Mikey, you made it till the end. I'm so happy. Well, listen, if you enjoyed what you heard and you want to hear more, subscribe to the podcast on, well, wherever you're listening to this. We are on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, TuneIn, Alexa, you name it. We're there. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. We also are on Instagram, which houses loads of behind the scenes audio snippets, polls, memes, and ways for you to get involved. So go follow us on Bold, Brown and British. That's the handle. And until next time, keep safe, my wonderful samosas.